All right, so Kyle from one of the Facebook groups is a brand new streamer, and we're going to be helping him out today, as well as teaching other people who are new or veterans in the situation the proper way to set up Streamlabs OBS with most of the basic stuff. But we're going to go into advanced options as well to teach you how to really get the quality of your stream going on. So we're going to go ahead and minimize this. I'm recording on OBS so that way we can go into all the settings of Streamlabs OBS. So we're just going to minimize that because that's not important. First thing you need to do, go to speedof.me, start a test, and the download is inconsequential. What we need to know is the upload speed. That's going to determine a lot of things for you as far as streaming. I would also test your internet on testmy.net and then just do an upload test here as well. This may or may not reflect the same information as the other test, but you want to have two different ballparks. That way you know what you're getting as far as different servers of testing. From this, you can extrapolate what your upload rate is kind of like to different areas of the world, at least in America here. I do believe this one has different servers for other places, but test your internet first. Make sure that things are going good with your internet. If not, if you're not getting the upload that you're actually paying for across either one of these websites, you need to call your internet service provider, go into the support area, and ask them to look at your signal quality to your modem. As weather changes or as other people, get internet from that ISP, your actual signal quality from them can change. So let's say in a weather situation, I'm up here in Pennsylvania, we have summer, fall, winter, spring. What happens with the cable lines is with those deviations of weather, the lines expand and contract. What happens with that is the resistance of those lines changes. So they may have to send somebody out to either turn up the gain or turn down the gain in basic terminology to match what the signal quality that I should be getting is. That or there could be a problem in my area and they have to fix some of the, end hops and that different stuff so I actually get my upload. That's the first thing that you need to do as a streamer. Make sure your upload is what your upload ought to be. And you want to test this, multiple times throughout the month just to make sure that things are what they should be. Um, Dropped frame rate is specifically network bound. That's all it is. It means the kilobytes you're trying to put out there aren't matching what your upload's able to actually do. So if you're seeing drop frame rates, you need to test your internet immediately. Now, I'll go into that a little bit. So let's say I've got 3 meg up. That's 3,000 kilobytes. That's the easy math for it. Just throw 3 zeros after what this megabyte upload is. That's what kilobytes you actually have available. Um, so we're going to get into the basics of what he needed. He's trying to do game capture, and it's not capturing. He's got basically a black screen probably. So I've already got my game screen set up stuff over here. So what I'm going to be doing is a tad different, and I'll explain that. So we're going to add on the teaching scene here, game capture. So we're going to click on game capture, add source. So now I could add a new source, which I shouldn't do because I've already got it in scenes, but I'm going to show you why we don't do that first off. In my case, not yours. So I add a new source. I leave pretty much everything here as is. Capturing any full screen application, which is what the game's going to be doing. That could be different if your game is in a Windows source or in the foreground or something like that. Generally, leave that where it is. If you have Crossfire, generally I recommend people don't do Crossfire when gaming because you're going to have multiple monitors and you're not going to get the performance you would if you were to divide those and have them doing their own independent thing per monitor. So game would be on one card and the secondary or third, all those other screens that you have will be on the other GPU alone. not Crossfire, not SLI. You get more performance in game because you're not dedicating all the VRAM on your card to all the monitors. That should make sense for the people that do SLI and Crossfire. Force scaling, don't do this. Allow transparency, don't do that unless specifically you need that. Limit frame capture rate, don't do that either unless you specifically need to do that for a specific reason. Capture cursor, you want that. That'll show the mouse like you see here. But if you're in game like first person shooter, you won't see the mouse unless you're, selecting a new loadout or things like that. If you don't have it checked, that could look a little weird because things are getting selected that you're not seeing the mouse for. Anti-cheat compatibility. More often than not, this needs to be on. In very rare cases, this could cause an issue and then you would uncheck it. You usually won't ever have to uncheck that. Capture third-party stuff. That's for like Steam overlay. Discord has an overlay. TeamSpeak's Overwolf has an overlay. And there are some other applications where you may want to, like your game doesn't show things that you want to see, but like you'd have a third-party application showing you CPU usage, RAM usage, frames per second, all that stuff. You see that on like benchmarks in YouTube. That would be a situation where you'd want third-party capture overlays. I'm just going to leave this as is. So right now we see nothing. The reason why is because we don't have a screen up in order to grab that full screen. So if I just click on my game here, you can see it. If I minimize, it's going to look paused. If I tab out in full screen only, it's going to look paused. If I leave this up and hit Alt-Tab to go back to OBS, you see it's animated now because this screen is up right back here. So that's what we got going on for that. Now, I wouldn't add it this way because if I go to this scene, it's black screen. If I click on this, tab back over, there it is. But if I go back to this screen, it's not there because these are acting independent from one another. So in my case, I'm going to remove this and add it as I should as an existing because it's already existing in another one. So I'd hit the add existing. If you don't have a game in multiple windows, you don't have to add existing. If you only have one scene, one game, you'd add new. Now, I've also got my cam set up over here. So if I want the cam, I personally am going to do video capture device, which is what you would do on your side. Also, if you have HDMI capture card, that's where this will come into play as well. Add source, I've already got the cam. I'm adding as existing. A new person would add new source, and then you can name it, which you would name it here. So I'm adding as existing. I'm going to be over here somewhere. Now here's the thing with the cam. You generally want to put this somewhere in the resolution of what the box size should be. You're seeing my ceiling right now and it looks all funky because I have green screen stuff set up, so it looks weird. But you don't want this to be 1080, you don't want it to be 720 unless you're doing an in real life stream where it's full screen. If you're doing a game, you want this to be more in the area of what the size is going to be. Never scale up. Never ever scale up. So I'm going to do 800 by 600. And then I'm going to scale down to, I don't know, maybe there, maybe here. I'd have to get in cam to actually see what I'm doing, but I don't feel like being on cam. So never scale this up whenever the resolution is lower than what this whole thing is, because you're upscaling and it's going to look like shit. If you do 1080 and scale way down to here, there's so many pixels compressed together that it'll start to look like shit. You could probably scale a 720 down to this and it'll look all right. The problem comes where like the definition around a line like this here, this box, would start to have what looks sort of like highlights around it. It looks real crisp, but it also looks weird. So always keep this below 720 or at 720 at the very highest. And now you can see that both, no matter what I do between these two scenes, they stay. So, if you have a cam, you'd add existing to each one of the cams for like your startup. This should be named gaming, and then this one would remain teaching. So like your bitrate back, all that different stuff, you'd have the cam as existing there. And you'd scale each one independently to what it ought to be. Now, here's the thing, is that each one of these scenes, unless you define that they turn off, they're running on your processor. Now you can see I've got an AMD Threadripper 1950X with 16 cores, 32 threads. Not really a big issue for me, but you want to make sure that every single one of these is shut down source when not visible. Otherwise, you're going to be using that CPU even though you're on a different screen or a different scene. So this, if I didn't uncheck this one here, deactivate when not showing, it would use the CPU while I'm over here. So I'm basically running two cams at once, two games at once, that kind of thing. This is a huge issue when it comes to your overlays. If they're animated, you can really, really destroy how much CPU usage you're using. So always make sure deactivate when not showing is selected for every single one of these things. Shut down source when not visible, make sure it's checked. Now for alert box, same thing. You want to make sure that the width and height are relative to what you actually want. Because if you go scaling them, the text, the image, the GIF, whatever you got in that box is going to look funky. You can scale down a bit, just trying to deviate from about 25% of what the actual box size would be. So scaling in, cool. Scaling out, real bad. Scaling out would be making this box bigger than what these two numbers actually are. Let's get into the settings. So for the settings here, we already know that I can do 20 meg up, so I'm not limited. If you have less, I'll get into that here after all this stuff. My base canvas for this monitor that I'm gaming on is 2560 by 1080. Technically it's 1080p because the last numbers define, you know, that's what we call things, 1080, 720, whatever. The first numbers are the width of the screen. The other one is the vertical axis here. So it's 1080p ultra wide. I'm going to downscale to 1706 by 720. You want to be in the 720p range because you're going to use less kilobytes per second. And additionally, I'm going to use less CPU because I'm not trying to render the larger screen. Three things suck up CPU usage: the resolution you're outputting, the frames per second, and the encoder. We're going to get to encoder here in a little bit. So for me, I've got 20 meg upload. I know I can do 720, no problem. When you're downscaling, you always want land coast. As you can see here, the lower you go, the better it is. Up here, it's going to be all blurry. It's going to be a little shitty looking. It's going to look more like what you're actually seeing with land coast. I put this to integer, and then I can do anything I want here, as where with the common values, which is what you're probably on, you're limited to what you can actually output here. 60 is the highest, 59.94, all that stuff. So if I want to change this, you know, to save a little CPU but still look like I'm going faster, I can go down to 45, save some CPU, be more fluid than 30. For this situation, I'm going to leave it at 48 though. So we've got this all set. That's done. Now what we need to do is make sure our audio is correct. We're on headset. We're doing device 1 for everything pretty much because we don't have other inputs that we're trying to do. Now your output. What we need to make sure though with the audio is that we're doing the same thing. So we're going to right click on this little icon down here. Go to sound settings. Not sound settings, sorry, that's wrong. We're going to sounds. First thing we want to do is make sure that we're on the recording tab. I'm using this headset here. We want to make sure that the level is at 100. And then in advanced, we want to make sure this is at 48 hertz. You might have more, but OBS doesn't really go over 48, so you want this on the highest 48 that you have. Make sure that allow applications to take exclusive control is unchecked for anything that you're using for audio. Otherwise, it can deviate what your actual output or hearing is and drop those levels down. Like Discord does that to me, and so does, what is it called? Skype. We're going to go to playback. We're going to make sure that the levels here are, this should be at 100. Don't know why it's not at 100. What's going on here? Why are you doing things I don't want you to do? I don't know. Windows is stupid. Anyways, leave that at 100. 48 again. Don't allow applications to take control. And then we hit OK. So all of our sound is good to go. Now for output, we want to be on advanced. We're on audio track 1 for streaming. I'm doing software encoding, which should be called CPU encoding. Now, you generally want to use software over NVIDIA because if you're gaming on the PC, you don't want to be robbing your GPU of processing power. If you're only doing 1080p and you've got like a 1080 Ti, you've got a lot of headroom. So in this situation, if you're going to do GPU encoding, you want to first see what your game's using processing power wise. I think I might have GPU Z on here. So I could use this or MSI Afterburner or something else to watch the GPU itself. So where's my sensors? All right, so this one, that's on the 560. 560 Ti right now is actually doing crypto coin mining. But here's my 970, which is what I game on. So these two cards are independent from each other. And you can see there's GP load of 46, and that's just with having the game in the background here. And when I game, that's going to be higher. So if I were to encode on that, I'd be robbing the game of processing power. Additionally, if I've got a weak GPU and I'm just watching the stream on both OBS here to see what things happening in the alerts, and I'm watching over here, I'm going to be using more GPU, which means I can't really encode on that GPU because I'm using too much processing power. So you want to make sure that if you're doing GPU encoding, you actually have the headroom to do so. This also plays into your encoding settings here. Down. All right. So with CPU, it's the same thing. You want to make sure you have the headroom to do the encoding that you're actually doing. So while I'm on software doing the CPU encoding here, first I want to make sure that the enforce streaming service encoder settings is unchecked. That screws up all your settings that you're actually trying to accomplish. Rescale output, we do not want that checked because that's going to double the rescale. We've already got the rescale set here. We don't want to double it. This should not even be in this application. I don't know why they put that there. It's dumb, just dumb. So your bit rate is going to be CBR, which stands for constant bit rate. What we kind of used back in the day was variable bit rate. Constant bit rate is going to fluctuate, but not as much as variable. This puts less stress on the Twitch servers because you're not going from static content with real low bit rate and then spiking way up to your actual bit rate. So that helps out with their servers. That's all that really is all about. Your bit rate here, there never has, and I doubt there ever will be, a bit rate cap on Twitch. Anyone who's told you that has misguided information. As you can see here, I actually personally stream at 7,500 bitrate. And people say that 6,000 is the bitrate. No matter if you're a partner or a first day person, there is no cap. There is one caveat to that though. There's a situation where I believe it's a player, the actual pause play button on Twitch, that thing as a player on its own has an issue. I can do with my processor a slower preset. If I do slower, I can't do 9,000 kilobytes per second. When you first go to my page, you'll see the live thing, and then the player will show an error message. And the reason why is because I think the player can't actually do that slow of a preset with that high of a bit rate. It's not a cap, because if I were to set this on very fast, I could do 9,000 no problem. You wouldn't have that issue. So for me, the max I can really get away with is 7,500. I could probably go above that. I haven't really tested every single little bit rate, and I don't feel like it. But that's what I do. You're not probably going to be able to do a slow preset. Keyframe is going to be 2. That's for everybody. And what that is, the short definition is every 2 seconds at the very least, it'll take a new screen grab. And then it'll build the bit rate based on the changes of that one keyframe. So what's happening here is every single frame is just a picture, and it builds on that keyframe. And as IP and B frames change, the kilobytes build to that. And if it changes too much, it'll grab its own new keyframe. This is just the default of how long until we grab one, but we can grab one sooner. Now the preset itself, you generally want to stick to this instead of GPU encoding, doing it on the CPU. And here's how you test this situation out to get the best quality out of your stream. You start off at like very fast. You stream, you watch this screen here, the performance tab. What you may see when you first come into here is something like this. Hit the more details. You'll be on the process tab, click on performance. So again, that was that thing down here. It says more details. You click it, you get this, everything else. So in here, while you're in game, you're streaming, you want to spin in a circle or move the screen as much as possible. And that's going to do more encoding on the CPU. That's going to raise these levels up because you're actually doing something. The screen's changing. The encoding has to actually work. If you're standing still, it's going to look a lot like this, where it's not really doing much. I'm at 15, 13%. If I were actually in game, this would probably be more in the 65 to 70% range because I'm actually doing things. I'm making things change. I'm having to encode that information, where this is just a static screen and it's not doing really anything. So you start off with a higher preset, well, a quicker preset, and you work your way down to where your CPU load here is somewhere in the 75% range while you're spinning or moving as fast as you can in game, making as much visual change in the game as possible. Because that's going to put stress on the encoder, which puts stress on the CPU, and then you know where the CPU preset can be at its slowest pace to be within 75% range. That's going to be your mark. Now, for GPU encoding, you're going to do exactly the same thing, just you're going to be watching this and changing the settings in this for NVIDIA. And I think AMD has one, but most people don't encode on AMD. But you're going to want to watch this and make sure that it's, in the 75% range as well. So that way, if there is some textures or something that loads and it doesn't overload the GPU and drop your frame rate and that kind of stuff. So same thing, just 2 different things. Profile leave on main, that helps out with the encoder. Transcoding, giving you, the other visual quality markers, like going from source to 540 or whatever below it. So that way mobile users or other people that don't have good download can actually select those other ones. That just helps out with the Twitch thing. Tune, don't bother with that. X264 options, don't bother with this. This setting here is specifically if I need to change a metric within this slow preset. OBS does a good job on its own. I'm advanced and I don't even mess with this today. I did mess with it back in the day when we were on the original OBS, and that's like the only thing you had just to get a little more oomph out of what I had going on. You're never going to use that. All right, so for the recording tab, I really wouldn't recommend messing with any of this stuff because you're already doing enough encoding. You're trying to get the max stream quality, and you can grab that video from Twitch as HD instead of trying to double down on your processor with recording it to the hard drive. But if you are going to do this, stick to MP4 or MKV and then set your path. I don't record, and I've got an amazing CPU. So I just, minimize this whole recording area. Audio track, I think this defaults to like 192 or something. Put it down 96. You're going to use less processing power, and your audio is going to sound basically like what I sound like right now, which is your true voice. And you're using less bitrate going up because this is a separate bitrate value that gets added on to everything else. If you're using any other audio tracks, do the same thing. Even people making music don't really need to go over 96 because if you're doing music, you're going to be recording on your PC at a much higher bitrate than you would with Twitch or something like that. So that really defines everything here, and it defines how you're supposed to set up everything to make sure your CPU or GPU is at a good level. Now here's the other thing is, advanced people like me that maybe I don't have a good CPU, but I have a good gaming computer, just gaming, I could add a second graphics card and encode on that graphics card instead. Again, I wouldn't be doing SLI. And then that way you're offloading it to something else. So if you can get your hands on a cheap graphics card that's good for encoding, you could go that route as well. Which I think if we were to switch this to NVIDIA, there should be an area for what GPU you want to use. I don't think my 560 has the ability to do that. Keyframe, preset, profile, level audio. Here we go. All right, so I have GPU 1, 2, or 0 and 1, which, did I close that? I probably closed it. All right, so with my dual GPU, I could encode on technically either one, I guess. So I don't know if this shows the GPU itself. I don't think so. I don't know. But generally, the one closest to the CPU on your computer is going to be 0, and then the other one would be 1. You can kind of see this in my thing here. So I think it might be in the text file for this. Yeah, it'd be on the text file for the settings for that. I'm not going to get into all that shit. But you could switch which GPU. So I could do 0 or 1. Or it may be defined in your computer as 1 and 2. I don't think it would, though. Unless maybe you have an iGPU CPU, which we're not going to get into that shit. But if you want to have dual GPUs or something and stream on one of the other ones, that's how you would do that. You're not going to... shit, all my settings are fucked. Anyways, now here's what we're going to get into for bitrate. So here's how you figure out your bitrate. Now, I've got 20 meg uploads, so I can really do whatever I want. I'll get into if you have lower. So for me, I would do resolution width times height times frames per second times the quality multiplier equals total bits per second. Now we need kilobytes, so we're going to take that total of bits per second and divide by 1000. That gives us our kilobytes per second. So in my situation, we're doing this based off of the output, not the base. So I'm doing 1760 times 720 times 48. The 48 is here. That's the frames per second. Now, quality multiplier is the last bit. Depending on what you're streaming and what your, where is it here? What your CPU preset is at, it's kind of going to define what your quality multiplier is going to be. In my situation, I could go lower than 0.13, but I want the highest visual fidelity in the game. You see absolutely no pixelate. It looks exactly like I'm gaming on Twitch, unlike a lot of streamers who are doing really terrible bitrate and really shitty encoding settings, where when they turn it kind of looks like garbled video, or you see a lot of pixelation, it doesn't look high fidelity, that's where they're using the wrong bitrate. So I can go lower because I can do I could actually do a slower, but I do a slow preset. So here's how I would calculate this. So we're doing 1706 times 720. So that's width and height of what I'm outputting times frames per second, 48, times my quality multiplier, 0.13, equals. So this is the bits. Here, total bits. I'm dividing that by 1,000 equals 7,664 is technically what I should be using if I was using a quicker preset, like say very fast. I can deviate from that because I'm doing a slower preset. And what I generally would do with this number for anyone else is I would round up to the nearest 100. So this would be 7700 would technically be what I would put most people at. So 7,700 kilobyte. Like I said before, there is and never has been a bitrate cap on Twitch. So you can do that. I do 7,500. I can deviate from the 7,700. I could actually probably go maybe down in the 6,000 range and still be fine, but I'm looking for high fidelity. And here's the thing. 7,700 kilobyte equals 7.7 megabyte download. If people don't have 10 meg download, they probably shouldn't be on Twitch. Here are the easy numbers for, Jesus Christ, can I get this thing? There we go. Here's the easy numbers for the quality multipliers. So your quality multiplier will go in between 0.08 to roughly 0.13. Put a 0 in front of there. Now, if you're doing, a quicker preset or using the GPU, you may need to go higher than that, maybe up to a 0.16 maybe. I don't know. It all depends on what you're outputting with all your settings, but generally these are going to be the situations here. So I don't have all the different figures, but you can see some of them here. So if you were trying to do 1080-60, the very lowest for something like League of Legends, you should probably be in the 12,400 range for bitrate. If you're doing first-person shooters, 16,200. This is the reason why we don't do this on Twitch. We don't stream at 1080. We downscale because it's a lot of kilobytes per second. Plus, also you're putting a whole lot of load on your processor trying to do any of these because it's trying to encode that large screen. The less we go with the frames and the less we go with the resolution, we can still pump out high definition video. Still looks high definition, even if it's in the 540 range, without having to sacrifice people being able to watch the stream and having to use a lot of CPU or GPU usage. So the lower we go in this, the more people can watch, the higher the definition, that kind of stuff. So let's say you only have 3 meg up. 3 meg equals 3,000 kilobytes per second. So we can't do 720, even 45 or 60 because that requires 5,400 kilobytes per second. If you're in the first-person shooter kind of stuff, to remain high definition quality. For that situation, we'd probably go down to 540, 45 frames per second if we need that extra, if we're in a first-person shooter, for that extra fluid movement. And that would require 2,500 kilobytes per second, as you can see defined up here. Well, you need 3,000, but you could deviate a bit and maybe drop down. If you've got 3,000 kilobytes per second upload or 3 meg, I really wouldn't go over 2,200 kilobytes per second because you still need data to transmit for other things like sending the game information of what you're doing back to that server. You still need headroom for, whatever you got going on and, your browser here, which really, unless you got like a YouTube playing, you're not going to be downloading or sending anything really. Most of the stuff's not going to be sent. Facebook will send, information back and forth or whatever, but most of these tabs are just dead tabs until they're actually doing something. But that pretty much describes everything. So you know how to set it up now. You know that you need to stick within the 75% CPU range. There is a bug with Windows 10 where some systems will show 100% CPU and you're not getting any issues with, gaming or other stuff like that. So keep that in mind, that if this is at 100% and without streaming, your game frames per second are still the same, the computer still feels the same, there's no glitchiness to it, that could be an issue. You just want to test out all your options. Start off with maybe faster or very fast and work your way down, or work your way back up to a quicker preset in order to match what you need over here. Generally speaking, CPU encoding is the way to go. GPU coding is what you would do if you have a shitty CPU and you really have no other option for streaming. But if you got any questions, comments, quibbles, or queries, let me know. I'm Jolly Riffic from United Streamers. You can check out more videos on this YouTube page. And we also have a website here, unitedstreamers.net, which I need to start posting more information to. But you can see the videos up here that I kind of have done before. And I'll probably add this one as well, just to fill in this area here. But for widescreen people, this might look a little fudged once I put in a new video. But anyways, that's that. If you have any issues, I'm here. Just let me know, and we'll get you squared away. Thanks for watching. You guys have a great day.